Welcome to the Laurent Collective podcast, where we go deeper than just surface talk.
Each week, we'll explore everything from family, business, creativity, culture, and faith.
To make sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe and hop on to Instagram at Laurent Collective to chat with us about this episode.
We often get asked how we ended up living in London, and today we're going to share part of that story. But more importantly, we're going to discuss how you process jumping into something when it doesn't make any sense. We're back today.
Hello.
We thought we would jump, I'm going to use the word jump several times, jump into talking about jumping when it doesn't make sense. Basically, taking
the leap.
Taking a leap in your life and in the next step and the next stage, that kind of thing. And sometimes it makes logical sense and sometimes it doesn't. And I also want to, as we start, we are now recording during the day, which means sometimes it's going to be a little bit louder in the background. So we live in London, so you might hear sirens, you might hear a plane, you might hear
somebody walking by our house.
A horn. Yeah, I mean, you could hear anything. So we're just going to give you a heads up that we're going to try and work around that, but we're also just going to keep recording because you get a feel for what London is like.
And to be honest, we're thankful that we're recording during the day now because that means the kids are in school.
Yay!
Yes!
Finally. So back to what we're talking about, speaking of London, is we get asked a lot about how on earth did you end up in London? And that is part of this story, of the idea of jumping when it doesn't make sense, jumping into this next step of what you might have going on in your life or something that just, it doesn't make sense for what you're currently living in. So we thought we would chat about when you're called into something that is completely maybe different than what you are already in, or maybe it's somewhat similar, but it's going to take you out of your comfort zone.
Definitely. I mean, just even if it's not necessarily something that you feel like, there's just that thing that you, in your deep down in your soul, you just feel like there's something that you could, if you could just get to that point, that maybe there's something that could really open up and reveal, and it's just taking that big leap to get there. So
yeah, exactly. So with that, before we get to like what that looked like for us, and again, this is going to look very different for everybody in the way that things, but in this episode, we will talk a little bit about our faith. So depending what your beliefs are and everything, that may look different for you, but I think there's still, no matter where you are in what you believe and everything, like there's still that gut feeling you get with things. Now, for us, we believe that's God speaking through you and showing you a direction. For others, that may look different of what you think. But as we're talking about this, just kind of like go with that thought, depending where you are on that. But part of our story first is understanding our backstory. I feel like we're like characters in a movie or something.
The prequel.
The backstory. So we obviously haven't always lived in London. We've been here, 5 years now?
Just about 5 years.
About 5 years. We lived in the Midwest of the United States before moving here. And you want to share kind of a little bit of what our life looked like there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had settled. We had created a pretty good routine in some ways. We had the house that we had lived in since we got married, and we were making it our own, and we was just doing, the things that I think growing up, you kind of understood are the things that you do as you become an adult, and the
American dream in some ways.
Yeah, I mean,
ish.
I think we were in the flow, like we were in that flow, like it was, we were. Yeah, like I said, we were getting into a really good routine and creating a lifestyle that at the time, like we desired. And it was good. I mean, it was good. Like, there wasn't amazing things about it that we
there wasn't anything
loved.
Particularly wrong with it or anything.
And so, I mean, we had the house, we had the dog, we had the kids.
We did not have a cat, but
all
we did not have a
picket
picket fence either. But we did have, and we also, both of us at that point of time we had 2 businesses, which I know sounds a bit crazy, but it was working. I had my photography business, And then Pat had his art / like freelance design business. And both of those were thriving too. It's not like we were looking for something different because they were doing pretty well and growing and, keeping us, I guess, like challenged in the right ways and that kind of stuff that we were still really enjoying that too.
Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways at that time we were seeing like opportunities and growth and like different avenues that were starting to open up. And so I think, we just felt like, we're headed this direction.
Exactly. And as you get to know me a little bit more, you'll find out like I'm very goal driven. Pat, you are, but not in the same way I am.
Yeah, I like to have things to shoot for, but
yes.
I hold them a little bit
lighter than I do.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
That's the different in our personalities. Yeah. And so at the beginning of each year, we would always, or towards the end of a year, we would kind of just as a couple take time to reflect and think about the past year, but then obviously think about the year ahead. And that when you own your own business, for us also meant thinking about like, what do we want to happen in our businesses in the coming year, that kind of thing. And for me and my photography business at the time, I'd had steady, really good growth for a couple of years in a row. And then we sat down this one year, and as we were talking through everything else, Pat said, okay, I'm sure you have a ton of goals for your business. What are those? And I was blank. I had nothing. And basically said, I don't know. I feel really weird, but I can't figure out anything. It was
extremely shocking.
Yeah.
In so many ways, if you know Maya, that was extremely shocking.
Cue the like dun dun music or something. But yeah, Pat literally, I remember sitting on our sofa and Pat was like, "What? Are you okay? Is something wrong?" He just couldn't quite figure it out. And I said, "I think that there's going to be something else for us this year, and I need to be open for that." Because I'm an Enneagram 3, and so achievements and stuff like that are super important to me. And so it was really, it was like a ripping of something for me in many ways to not have my hands like dug in deep to these goals for my photography business and to say like, I think there's something else, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know what that means. And I don't know how to set a goal for it. I don't know how to do any of this.
Yeah.
It was really confusing and really, really hard for me. I think for you, you were like, okay, let's see what's up. And for me,
I mean, a little bit of that, but also like, oh my gosh, like I thought we were doing this thing.
We were on a path.
And we had things lined up and all that kind of stuff. And then when you came to me and was like, wait, like you don't have a plan? Like that's a little scary. Like,
for
what's
me,
going on?
Who has it all like written out of in the next 5 years and the next, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we decided to, at that moment, to just start praying about like what God had for us, what this next thing might be, if maybe, and I think we were just like, well, maybe there is something in the business and that kind of thing.
Right.
And we're not sure what this is.
It just wasn't like being shown quite yet.
Yeah. We just kind of felt like there feels like there's something else, but we have no clue what it is. And that's a really hard place to be. I mean, again, it's, well, we just kind of continued what we were doing, to be honest. We didn't change much of what we were doing at the time, except for being super aware and praying through what is this thing.
Yeah, we just kind of kept pedaling in a sense. Like we just kept things moving. There was no like, anticipation of anything. It was just, let's just keep going kind of thing.
And in that, an opportunity came up for us. We had been to Haiti a couple times. Pat and I had been. It's someplace we still want to take our kids, that we want to take our children to. And at that time, there was a opportunity for us to possibly have our family go to Haiti for a summer and do like an art camp kind of thing. It was kind of a mix of a lot of different things. So there was that opportunity to possibly do that. And it was just very much like kind of a thing that a couple people said like, oh, you could do this. We'd be up for having you here to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think on paper, it made sense. Like it was like, yes. And we wanted to start exposing some of, our kids to some of the stuff that's other than Midwest USA kind of thing. And like, we were just kind of getting to that point. And yeah, on paper, we were really struggling of why like we weren't saying yes to it, because it just made sense.
It seemed like
we already had built relationships down there. they were asking us to come down and help with, creating these programs for artwork and creativity and all this stuff with the kids and different places that different medical teams would go out and serve and help. And like, it just was like, what? Like, why are we not signing up for this already?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have, again, it was just kind of like, hey, we have this idea. Would you be interested? So it wasn't this cut in stone kind of thing. However, it felt weird that at first, I think we both were like, "Oh, cool! This is the thing." Because summertime was actually one of my busiest times for my business. So I thought, "Oh, maybe this is the thing." And you can quickly, when you're in that space of patiently waiting for something, and something does get put in front of you, I think both of us were like, "Great, this is it. It's figured out." But then someone in our life at the time, like, just gave us amazing wisdom that was saying, before you jump, like, just take some time to reflect on this and really see if you think that this is the thing. And when we did that, we both had this weird feeling that we were like, I don't think this is it. This doesn't
feel quite right.
Something doesn't feel right with this, which again was strange because it kind of fit. It checked all the boxes.
We were kind of, praying and hoping that something would reveal itself, and oh my gosh, this thing's revealed itself, like, of course.
Yeah. So. At the same time that was happening, we were part of a church at the time in the States that was doing some church plants all over the world. If you don't know what a church plant is, basically it means starting a new church. That's the simplest terms of what that can mean. And there was going to be one in London. And so another backpack story is we had
prequel to the prequel.
We had came to London before we had any children. And we really loved it here. We made a decision on the flight back, like maybe we should try and just like switch our, what we were doing at the time and switch and do in London and move here for a couple of years and like put off having kids. We had already waited like 5 years into our marriage to even try to have kids. Little did I know when we were having the conversation that I was actually pregnant. Yep. So that changed our thoughts and we decided to stay in the States. And so some people knew that and approached us and said, hey, have you heard about this London thing? Are you guys interested? And we're like, oh, yeah, that's so cool. They're doing that. But no, we're not interested.
We'll support it from here.
That's exactly. Fine. We have 3 children. We have these businesses, all that stuff. Doesn't make sense. So even though we had this thing out there that was like, oh, there's something next, we were like, well, clearly that's not it. That really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But then the Haiti thing came up. We feel like that's a no. And then, this is where I don't want to sound like overly cliche, but it might sound that way. So sorry. But basically what happened is that, we were sitting in a church service and just hearing the message and everything. Wow.
It's getting a big truck
really loud in the background. Well, do you all hear that? This is what it's like when you decide you're going to start recording something.
I really hope that doesn't stay just outside our window.
I think it's moving on. Okay. But we were in a church service and we were both just really moved to tears of hearing what was being said and everything. And suddenly we both didn't really talk to each other about it.
Well, and the sermon was really like kind of the hook for it was being brave, not safe.
Which had been our family's.
Which was kind of a family.
I don't know if you want to call it a motto,
we were trying to build that into the DNA of our family.
Yes, and we even had the word brave. We had an artist make the word brave out of some wood and stuff, and it hung in our home. And so we left that church service. Pat and I really hadn't said anything to each other. We just were like, whoa, that was a really emotional service. Although in my head, I was like, I think we're supposed to be open to London. And Pat was feeling the same thing. We came home to, we'd always talk to our kids about what they learned, like when they were in their kids' stuff at church. And one of them said, oh, I learned about being brave, not safe. And I told them that's what our family's all about. And Pat and I could feel in my gut like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And then another one of our children said, oh, I learned about like we're supposed to step out of the boat when it doesn't make sense and just trust. And then after they went to bed, Pat and I shared with each other what we were feeling. And we realized, I think we're supposed to be open to this London thing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it was, we kind of came to a point where we just really felt like this is something that we need to be paying attention to. It was something that was tugging at us. There was something unique happening in both of us that we needed to pay attention to it. And so we did. We started to pay attention to it.
Exactly. We pursued. I don't know if that's the right word. We just said out loud, hey, we're interested. We want to know more. And then we just took each step forward in it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a point where we decided to kind of take that leap, but it was a small leap. I don't think we were ready to fully commit early on. And so we said we would take one step, and then if that step worked, then we would take another step. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. And I mean, it did not make sense. As we shared with some people and everything, people would say to us, what are you doing? Why would you've got these businesses you're growing, you've got a great community around you, all of those kinds of things. Just picking up and leaving when I look back, it still doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. I mean, as we took those steps, it really, I think when you take a leap, and sometimes people will say, well, you take the leap and then like you go for it and then everything starts to work out. And I think some of that did happen, but at the same time, it was really hard. It was really hard as we took those steps, but we still felt that this was the right direction to be going.
Yeah. And I think there's often that phrase of like, if it's the right direction, God will open the door. What we found out, yes, that is true, but it doesn't mean the door is swung open fully for you. There's lots of challenges to get it to be open more.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where for us, like our connection to God and our praying and just being able to talk with each other and talk with people we're in community with and stuff, people say, no, like keep going. I know it's difficult right now, but no, don't give up. Like keep going kind of thing. The door is open. You just got to push it open a little bit more to get to the next door.
Yeah.
Goodness, it felt like there was door after door after door. But amazing, crazy things happened. We got to the point, and the next step for us was then we needed to sell our house.
Yeah.
We decided we weren't going to keep it or rent it or anything like that. And there was people, we literally sold our house. We didn't even put it on the market.
Yeah.
We sold our house in 45 minutes of the first people that looked at it, and they offered us more than what we were even going to ask. But then there was this little mishap of our roof needed replaced, which meant that we were gonna have to come down in the price and all that stuff. Or
it would have fallen through. There was a potential.
Yeah, or they weren't interested. And we knew just where we lived, there was often storms that would have like hail damage and stuff, and there was hail damage on our roof when we had somebody look at it, but there was no storm that we could date it to. I mean, we couldn't figure that out. So insurance-wise, our homeowner's insurance wouldn't cover that. However, literally, we woke up at like 2 a.m. one night, I think, and it was so loud, and both of us shot up in bed trying to figure out what was going on. And then Pat looked at me and goes, "That's hail."
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it was. And we called the insurance company the next day, and it had actually caused even more damage to our roof, and our roof was covered fully by insurance. So we got a brand new roof. I mean, obviously
we didn't.
The new people. I think we only lived with it for like 3 weeks. And we were able to then do that. And then we didn't have a home to live in. We couldn't find, because we didn't know when we were leaving yet in the process of the visa and stuff like that. And so that was a really weird to find temporary home. And then somebody heard through the grapevine we needed a place. And literally, I think it was up to the wire, like 2 weeks before we were going to move and stuff.
2 to 3 weeks, I think.
We got a phone call that said, hey, somebody has a condominium they have just bought to rent out, and they would like to offer it to you at a really low reduced rent while you guys are in the process kind of thing. And it's so amazingly, we
literally, like, as all those things were happening, we were literally selling, getting rid of everything.
Yes, exactly.
Everything that we had built up over the last 12 years, 13 years in this home. And so it was such a unique process in so many ways. It's
so weird to have this life in many ways that you have built to be a certain way. I mean, it's not like that. It wasn't bad. I don't want to say that there was something bad about it at all, because there wasn't. But we even our home, we had done things to our home to make it like truly uniquely ours and things like that. And our businesses, all those different types of things. We had a great community. Our family was somewhat nearby, all that kind of stuff. And it does, if you were somebody looking from the outside looking in, you would literally, and we often thought this too, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, like, why would you do that? It makes no sense.
Exactly. Yeah, it just, and it feels like that in a lot. So if you're in a situation where you're looking at a next step of something.
In some ways it still feels like that.
It does still feel like that sometimes. That we're like, what did we do?
Yeah. Why are we doing
that doesn't make sense. And you might find yourself in that situation right now too, where you're like, well, there's this thing that I feel called to, that I feel like is my next step, but like it's completely different than what I'm in right now. It completely looks different. It may not be as dramatic as, moving a family of 5.
Selling everything and moving to somewhere completely new where you don't know anyone.
Into a different country and stuff. But I think something that we have felt often after being here for 5 years is that while our story may seem like bigger, because it is like we sold everything, we had to do all this stuff, and then we moved countries and all that, it doesn't matter on the scale, the bigness that we're sharing in our story, because there's probably something you're looking at and bigger or whatever that is does not come into play. Like, there are small decisions we have to make in life that are a next step that feel just like the same. Leap. Yes.
Huge, yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Feel like that trust leap, if you will, kind of thing. And so don't compare to what we're saying, like, oh, well, I'm not that big, but you might all, who knows? You could be looking at something even bigger.
Bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, like, when you have built a life, or there's a life that you have, it's really hard to step out of some of those things and be uncomfortable. And some of it can be really gut wrenching too. I mean, like when we another part of our story is that, like, we didn't have a visa to return after living here for 2 years. And we really felt like God still wanted us in London. So we went back to the States for 4 months, and amazingly, a visa did come about. And we literally, again, took a massive risk in what we felt like our next step was. And we left our house in London exactly as it was, as if we were just leaving for vacation. But we had no way of returning. And amazingly, we did. But during that time, we realized too, like, we had a golden retriever, and we needed to find like a permanent home for her, because we were no longer, like, we just knew we couldn't
she
here
was getting up in age, and she needed a new home, forever home.
And we did find, and how we found that was just another amazing story. But, like, talk about gut wrenching of, like, watching your children cry as they say goodbye to her, and she's so happy with this. Amazing. Yeah, she's in such a good place.
It's a perfect place.
There are things like that like, one of our sons, when we moved out of our house, like, I'll never forget him, like, going into his bedroom and, like, touching his wall and, like, crying. I mean, I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it, but, like, oof. Yeah. Like, it's not. So I think that's the hard thing, is when you, like, make a next step in things, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Yeah,
like, it
was not easy at all.
No, definitely. I mean, there was so many things.
Yeah, I mean, and even going back to friends and family, and just stepping away from that foundation that you've built for so long is going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard.
And it's important to like feel those feelings in many ways. Like, when we moved, as excited as we were and everything to get to London, and the kids were all in with it too, which was super, was wonderful. Like, the flight over to London from the States, like, I think I cried most of the flight. Like, anytime I would wake back up, if I fell asleep at all, I would just start crying again. I was scared. I was like, what have we just done? All of those things. And so, it's taking that next step in something that is unknown does not mean it's going to be a golden path of, like, oh, joy,
you took that step and it's all sunshine and rainbows.
Yes.
And, amazing paths that are just so easy. And
it doesn't mean that.
It was not.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of culture tells us, if you just do this next thing that's meant for you, like, oh,
it's all going to be perfect.
Things will open up and it will be wonderful and all that kind of stuff. And we're not trying to be negative, because there is amazing and wonderful things. We still wouldn't be here if it weren't for that. But there's a lot of difficult when you do things, you take that next step, and you're still going to have challenges. You're still going to, there's going to be days that really are horrible.
Yeah. And you're ready to go back.
Exactly.
In some ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if you have already taken that step and you're in that, that you're like, oh, I just made this big change, but like, this isn't going how I thought it would go. That was us. Like when we got to London, there were so many things that we immediately as a family fell in love with and everything, but there were lots of difficult things too that were just like, wait, what have we done?
Exactly. It was just so different. It was so different than, yeah. At the same time, some of it felt so natural.
Yes.
So felt like the perfect fit, and like why, yeah. It was such a mix of emotions. It really was.
And I think that's the thing. Like when you step into new things, it is, I hate to use the word roller coaster, but I mean, it just is. We'd go from one day from, out at a picnic with new friends that we'd made and stuff like that, in the city in central London and just having a great time in this new community we made to the next day. Like one of our sons just went through a period where he was bullied really bad. He was the new kid. He wasn't fitting in. He was different. To sitting on the stairs with him as he's bawling because of what happened, and so within 24 hours, it felt like we would go from a high to the lowest of lows to
why did we do this?
Yeah, it just, and sometimes you have this vision of what the thing is that you're stepping into will look like. And that for us too didn't happen either. Like we were all gung ho for this one thing and then it didn't happen like that. And that was really difficult to just grapple with and struggle with and everything like that too. And so, but we still felt, nope, this is where we're supposed to be, which is really hard because what you want to do is you want to just like jump off ship and be done with it when you get in those difficult times.
Definitely. For sure.
Yeah. On paper, it may not make sense the next thing that you are facing.
Yep.
And
there might be something else on the side there that on paper it does look right, but there's still this thing that's pulling you towards this other thing.
Exactly. And if you're somebody who, has a faith, that's where we would say like, pray, do whatever that is in your faith, and ask for guidance, or like I said, that gut feeling that you get, and just and if you can, to not make an immediate decision.
Yeah.
If you can say, I need some time to think about it, if you're in a situation where someone else, I guess, is asking you or that kind of thing, you've just got and you just have to take the leap and you just don't know. And it's not like you've ruined everything if you get into something and realize actually this isn't it. You can still, you can
still learn so much from that.
You can learn, exactly, you learn from it and you can still make another change. Like you're not
exactly
putting yourself in concrete that you're stuck there forever kind of thing. So if you're facing something in a decision, help, loosen yourself a little bit up, I guess, instead of making and thinking.
Definitely.
Yeah. And again, like we said, there's so much more to our story.
Yeah, that's just like a little scratch on the surface of part of that story. I mean, there was even part of that story where to even get here, we had to get rid of a huge amount of debt.
Oh yeah.
And
we'll talk about that at a different time.
That's a totally separate episode. But, there was just so many things that through that, again, taking those little steps here and there, got us here. But it was hard. But there were also some really fun moments. Even like, I remember whenever we would get to a certain point with certain things, we'd have a pizza party with our kids and just things like that we would create within those little steps that led us to a big step.
And that's a really good point. Like as you're taking next steps and jumping into unknowns is to take time to celebrate too. I think it's too often that we, want to just get to the next thing. Great, did that. Let's go to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I'm totally guilty of that. But taking simple ways to mark a moment and to celebrate it, like you said, like we did is like we ordered in pizza. Sometimes it was frozen pizza, but the kids knew like we have pizza. What happened?
Yeah.
They still to this day, like we get
true.
pizza and they're like, did something happen? Are we celebrating something? And so it's fun that they still 5 years later still have that memory kind of stuck in. And our story's not over. That's the thing. It's like when you step into something new, it's not over. Like things are still going to be uncovered. New things are still, you might be asked to make another step. Like that's life, right? That's, what are your thoughts on that? I think.
Yeah. I think for us, our story is definitely not over. And I think in some ways it's cool to look back on the things that were a part of our story before we made this leap, that now that we're in it, that we're in this part of this leap that we took, realizing all those things that we had done in the past have actually really led us to this point. That all the times we did that or this or whatever have really allowed us the opportunities that we're getting now because we took that leap.
Yeah, the opportunities, the experiences, the difficult things that we learned about. Somebody that we know, he always talks about like the quilt of your life and like the threads that run through it and everything, and then how they connect and what that looks like and everything. And you often don't get the chance to like kind of have like the overview of that. And sometimes when you step into something new, a couple of years later, you can look back and be like, oh, yeah, that time I went through that was really difficult, or that thing or that choice that I made, and those kind of things, you can start to see, that's how I have somehow stepped into this or this thing, and that kind of thing. And it's amazing to be able to see that. But I think it is such a reminder of like whatever stage you are in things, don't discredit it, because
don't
it's part of it.
Wish yourself ahead in some ways.
Exactly.
Really be present in the stage that you're at.
And pay attention to the good things and the hard things and what you can be learning about in that stage, because it really is going to prep you, and it's going to be something you'll use and whatever that next jump into the unknown.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if you're not at a stage where you're feeling like you have to take a leap in some ways.
Being present.
If you're present, you might be able to see something new, and that has created that next leap that you need to take and things like that.
And it is asking you, I mean, we're all about going deeper and past surface. This kind of stuff like makes you go deeper. Makes you go deeper in your thoughts. It makes you go deeper in your community and asking people questions, or allowing other people to input into your life, and both good things and difficult things they may need to say to help you grow. Yeah. And so being open to that is super important in all of this. When you're looking at making a jump into unknown things, into a next step, it's super important to not just be like, look at surface stuff, to really go deeper.
Yeah, to be vulnerable in the process with others is really going to help you through it. Yeah, for sure.
So, I feel like we've talked about a lot of range of emotions, and that's what it is, though. It's real, and that's exactly what taking a jump into something unknown.
It's that roller coaster that you talked about.
I know, I don't want to use that analogy, but here we are saying it again. So we'd love to hear from you guys. What are you facing right now, or what decisions are you looking at that you are thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I have clarity there, that kind of stuff. We'd love to hear your stories too.
Yeah, what those leaps that you've taken.
Exactly. It's inspiring for others to hear it, I think, too. No matter the smallness or bigness of whatever that leap might be and that jump might be, it helps others to hear other stories too. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you on it. And thanks for taking the time to hear a bit of our story, but also hopefully it helps you as you are looking into what your next thing might be.
Definitely. See you guys.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Laurent Collective podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, which helps others find our podcast. Continue the conversation with us over on Instagram at Laurent Collective.
We look forward to going deeper than just surface talk with you again next week.